Hi, this is for Dr. Gorman's J-term class about culturally responsive education for speech language pathologists. And we're going to be working through interpreter instructions and how we would be administering the CELF-5 assessment. For our purposes for this video, we're just going to be doing record form 1 for ages 5 to 8. There are a couple subtests that are for ages 9 to 21, but for the purposes and timeliness of this video, we'll just be working on the subtest in record form 1. I am going to be the examiner, also known as the SLP, and then Morgan is going to be the interpreter for this video. Our client currently is off camera because we're going to intro this, and then we're going to start by having a discussion with just the interpreter to begin before our client gets here in order to prepare. Hi, Morgan. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Hi.
I am so excited that we are going to be meeting Mia today. Mia primarily speaks Spanish. We're going to be using the CELF-5 assessment, which is going to be testing her expressive, receptive, phonological skills, as well as some pragmatic skills. She's going to be sitting in between the both of us, and we're going to have the stimulus books right in front of her. So that way we'll be on either side. I'll primarily be flipping the pages if that's all right with you. I am going to give you one of these record forms so that way you're able to follow along, see what the instructions are, as well as anticipate anything coming up that we'll be saying to her. I'm going to read the instructions in English to her, and then if you could repeat back those instructions exactly as I say them in Spanish, that would be perfect. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. We're going to be doing pretty much all of these subtests, sentence comprehension through. Each of them has a different color at the top, and they all have slightly different rules, but most of them are at the top of the page. Like I said, I'll give that initial instruction, and then I'll have you repeat it. Some of the instructions when giving it require pointing to the stimulus book right here. So when I'm reading it in English, I'll point when needed. And then when you read it in Spanish, I think it'd be helpful for Mia if you pointed as well to the same things that I was pointing at. There are a couple subtests where she's going to be required to speak back. So she'll probably be saying what she needs to in Spanish. So when she finishes answering, if you can repeat back exactly what she's saying to me in English, that would be great. So that way I could write it verbatim. And then if you're available after the test, there's a couple subtests that vary a little bit in their answers of dialectal and cultural variations. So just to ensure that I'm recording things appropriately, if you wouldn't mind staying afterwards, so that way we could determine if some of her answers were appropriate, that would be great.
Yeah, that would work.
Great, perfect. So now we're gonna have our client come on in. Before we begin, just speaking to you as viewers, this is Mia. She's going to be our client. She speaks primarily Spanish, so this is why we have an interpreter, so that way Morgan will be able to translate into Spanish for her and then translate back to me in English when needed. For the purposes of this video, we do not speak two languages, so I'm going to be the speech therapist. Morgan's going to be the interpreter. What she's saying for you guys will be in English, but ideally it would be in Spanish. So when she's copying exactly what I'm saying, she is speaking in Spanish. Hi, Mia. How are you?
Hi, Mia. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm Joanna, and I'm the speech therapist.
I'm Joanna, and I'm the speech therapist.
Okay.
My name is Morgan, and I'm the interpreter.
Okay, hi.
Okay, hi.
We're going to be looking at your language skills today. Are you ready?
We're going to be looking at your language skills today. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at these pictures.
Let's look at these pictures.
I'm going to point to the picture that shows I can wear this.
I'm going to point to the picture that shows I can wear this.
Can you point to the picture that shows I can eat this?
Can you point to the picture that shows I can eat this?
Point to the picture, the boy has a ball.
Point to the picture, the boy has a ball.
Point to the picture, the girl lost her balloon.
Point to the picture, the girl lost her balloon.
So for this subtest, we're using the interpreter, but since it doesn't require Mia's responses, I can see what she is pointing to and can determine on my own whether she is pointing to the correct or incorrect item. At this point in time, Morgan is not needed to interpret back anything into English, but she is here to translate what I'm saying in English to Mia. So that would be the sentence comprehension. Next is linguistics. Here are some pictures. I will point to the flower.
Here are some pictures. I will point to the flower.
Now you point to the picture that I name.
Now you point to the picture that I name.
Point to the house.
Point to the house.
Point to the ball.
Point to the ball.
Point to the apple.
Point to the apple.
Point to the sun.
Point to the sun.
Point to the flower.
Point to the flower.
Awesome. So those are the trials for this one. Again, Mia isn't saying anything back, so nothing needs to be interpreted back into English for us. However, she is translating the instructions and what I'm asking Mia to point to in Spanish for her. Next up is the word structure assessment. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Here is a boy and here is a girl.
Here is a boy and here is a girl.
This boy is standing and this boy is.
This boy is standing and this boy is
Sitting.
sitting.
Mom said, these shoes are mine and those shoes are.
Mom said, these shoes are mine and those shoes are
Yours or mine.
yours or mine.
So in this scenario, since Mia is needing to respond verbally, Morgan's able to translate what she is saying in Spanish to English. And as we can see, I'm writing down exactly what she's saying. So in the second scenario, she said yours or mine. So I'm making sure I'm writing down yours or mine. The correct answer is yours. So at the end, I will go through this subtest with Morgan and make sure that there's not a dialectal difference here by saying mine or yours, making sure that the response is appropriate to what I'm looking for. Next subtest that we're going to be looking at is the word classes subtest. Mia, here are 3 pictures. I want you to point to the 2 that belong together.
Mia, here are 3 pictures. I want you to point to the 2 that go together.
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 So again, this one doesn't require Mia's response, so I'm able to see on my own whether or not she's pointing to the right items and therefore able to score appropriately. The next subtest is following directions, so this requires a switch of stimulus book. Okay, Mia, here are some pictures. I want you, hang on, apologies. Okay, Mia, here are some pictures. I will point to the circle.
Okay, Mia, here are some pictures. I will point to the circle.
Now you point to the picture that I name.
Now you point to the picture that I name.
Point to the triangle.
Point to the triangle.
Point to the X.
Point to the X.
Point to the circle.
Point to the circle.
Point to the square.
Point to the square.
Point to the circle and a square.
Point to the circle and a square.
So again, doesn't require Mia's responses. I'm able to determine on my own whether or not she's pointing to the appropriate item. The next one, we're switching back to stimulus book 1, is the formulated sentences subtest. Right? Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Here is a picture of people in a library.
Here is a picture of people in a library.
I will use the word book in a sentence to talk about the picture.
I will use the word book to talk about the picture in a sentence.
The girl is reading a book.
The girl is reading a book.
Now, can you make a sentence using the word reading?
Now, can you make a sentence using the word reading?
He is reading.
He is reading.
So for this one, this does require a verbal response. So it's really important that I'm recording verbatim of what Morgan is translating because that would in turn be verbatim of what Mia is saying. So I need to make sure that I'm keeping in mind the exact grammar that Morgan is repeating back to me, as well as any pronoun usage and things like that, because it does make a difference at the end for scoring purposes. And then one of the last subtests is recalling sentences. So this does not require any stimulus book. Okay. Now I'm going to say a sentence.
Now I am going to say a sentence.
I want you to listen carefully and repeat back what I say.
I want you to listen carefully and repeat back what I say.
Let's try.
Let's try.
My sister is in the 6th grade.
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 Does Mr. Gomez teach reading?
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 So again, it's really important that I'm filling in verbatim of what Morgan is telling me, since I wouldn't be able to understand anything or exactly what Mia was saying. It would be important that the verbatim response is noted because we're marking down how many errors that are being made. And then we would just continue on and follow the typical rules of discontinuing and stuff. The last subtest that we're going to be looking at today is the understanding spoken paragraph subtest. Listen carefully to what I'm going to read you.
Listen carefully to what I'm going to read you.
Afterward, I will ask you some questions about what I read.
Afterward, I will ask you some questions about what I read.
For purposes of this video, we'll just be reading the test paragraphs for ages 5, or we'll do the trial, and then for her, we would be reading ages 5 and 6. Andy liked to visit his grandfather who lived on a farm in the country. The last time Andy saw his grandfather, he had promised to send Andy a surprise. Andy was excited because his mom said the surprise would come today. After breakfast, Andy's dad brought a big basket into the kitchen. Andy heard a meow and saw a long furry tail coming from inside the basket.
Andy liked to visit his grandfather who lived on a farm in the country. The last time Andy saw his grandfather, he had promised to send Andy a surprise. Andy was excited because his mom said the surprise would come today. After breakfast, Andy's dad brought a big basket into the kitchen. Andy heard a meow and saw a long furry tail coming from inside the basket.
Why was Andy excited?
Why was Andy excited?
Because there was something in basket surprise.
Because there was something in the basket a surprise.
What happened after breakfast?
What happened after breakfast?
He was going to receive a gift from his grandpa.
He was going to receive a gift from his grandpa.
What did Andy hear coming from the basket?
What did Andy hear coming from the basket?
A meow.
A meow.
What was Andy's surprise?
What was Andy's surprise?
A cat.
A cat.
Name 2 things you think Andy will do with his surprise.
Name 2 things you think Andy will do with his surprise.
Play with it and feed it.
Play with it and feed it.
Where did the surprise come from?
Where did the surprise come from?
His grandpa.
His grandpa.
What might Andy say when he talks to his grandfather?
What might Andy say when he talks to his grandfather?
He will thank him.
He will thank him.
So again, since this one is requiring Mia to verbally respond, it's really important, if you've noticed throughout the whole video, that I'm maintaining eye contact with Mia, even when Morgan is telling me what she's saying back in English. This is giving respect to Mia, even though I'm not understanding what she's saying because there's a dialectal difference. I'm still giving her the respect by maintaining eye contact with her and talking to her, not avoiding her and talking just to the interpreter. So I recorded those responses verbatim. And then after the subtest, this would be the last one that would be administered. I would thank Mia for coming in today and appreciate all her hard work. And Morgan and I would go and bring her back to her family. If an interpreter is needed for her family, most likely, Morgan would be able to translate exactly what I was saying. And Morgan and I would then go back into the room to determine any dialectal differences and variations in a couple of the subtests, such as the word structure, formulated sentences, and recalling sentences, just to make sure that the responses were appropriate, if there was a dialectal difference. Just overall in general, some modifications and accommodations that can be made. Is just making sure that the instructions are slow and clear, allowing extra time for responses if needed, increasing the number of trial items. Another one is continue to test beyond the ceiling after the discontinue rule, but you wouldn't award points for it. So it's kind of just to see, since we wouldn't really be using the standardized scores anyway. Another couple modifications that can be made would be rewording the test instructions if needed and asking the student to explain the incorrect answers that they may have provided, just to maybe grasp a difference. So for example, for the one where they have to point to the two pictures that belong together, if they felt like another one belonged together as far as a pair, maybe I would ask why they felt that and see if maybe there's a cultural difference that could be seen, things like that. Other than that, I think that this is how we would collaborate with the interpreter as well as collaborate with the client for somebody with a different language.